Hi, I'm Rosie Greenberg. I'm an artist and leadership development trainer. I've been teaching narrative storytelling and this inner critic work for the past 6 years. And over the past several years, after completing a master's at Harvard Kennedy School in public policy and leadership, I started teaching public narrative storytelling for leadership, and helping people really dive into sharing their individual stories about why they care about what they care about and where they have, where they bring those values. And I began noticing for myself and for the people that I was working with that sharing our story was one thing, knowing how to craft the story, understanding the context, understanding who we're speaking to, and how to craft a strong ask. But having the courage to do it was a whole other thing. And believing in ourselves, believing that we actually had something to offer, we had something to say, was a whole different ballgame. So over the past 2 years, I've really been diving into that piece of things, exploring what is this sense of self-doubt that we hold, and how can we begin to shift it. I have been bringing in tools in adaptive leadership, in internal family systems, narrative therapy, the world of shadow work, to really undergird this work with a strong foundation from the psychology world. And I also bring in my art and my own lived experience. So you'll get to hear a lot about my own experiences through this, and we'll get to be exploring and experimenting together. Everything I lead is participatory, experiential, and community-based. So that means we'll develop a strong kind of connection with the other 20 to 30 people in the cohort. So welcome. This is Live into Leadership, Overcome Self-Doubt and Step into Your Power, starting in August 2023. So the whole idea of this program is, I almost imagine that you're kind of a universe. You've got all of these stars that are like moments in your life that make up who you are. Big ones, little ones, this vast space of experiences, moments that you've had. And what we tend to do throughout our lives is create a narrative, a through line of saying, this is who I am, this identity, this job, this role, this relationship, these moments that I remember, this is kind of the essence of who I am. And we take certain stars and link them together almost into a constellation. We're meaning-making creatures, so we make meaning of this. But the thing is that this meaning tends to stick, it tends to hold, and often it includes a lot of shoulds, a lot of things we should be, ways we should show up, or narratives about ourselves that actually aren't that helpful, like I could be doing better, but I'm just not, or I'm a little lazy, or I really should work harder, I'm too fat, I'm too thin. Any of these stories about ourselves kind of become part of this narrative implicitly. So we end up holding them, even this self-judgment, even this critique, as part of kind of who we are. So the invitation for this program is to say, hey, wait a minute. There are so many other stars in your sky. There are so many other moments of your life and things about you that you could link together. What if we created a different thread, a more positive one, a thread of, hey, wait a minute, these moments are moments when I was, maybe in that top 30, think, oh, I'm not creative enough. Well, actually, there are moments in your life where you were creative. And if we just find those and link them together, there can be a whole new story, a whole new narrative. And so then another one, and another one, and another one. And it's just about the choice of which things we choose and how we choose them, rather than just a default choosing with agency, the stories, the things that we want to tell about ourselves, the beliefs that we want to hold about ourselves, that we can kind of braid all of these different narratives together and remember that we're ultimately the sky rather than any of the threads. Now, there are really good reasons why we are choosing certain threads, reasons that come from our families, reasons that come from society, and the shoulds that are put on us through broader, bigger systems of oppression. And so we'll look at some of those and we'll look at, okay, given this reality, how do I move and how do I want to be? So this is not just an individualistic thing of like, oh, you have the whole sky, but really, how do we do this in a real way? Now, often some of the threads can look like this, like, oh, I'm not sure I deserve this job. Anyone could do this better than me. Who am I to lead this? That was dumb. I always say dumb stuff. I look ugly today. Or I don't have enough experience. They're all real grown-ups and I'm just pretending. So this is this really critical voice that we can start believing. We can start thinking, this is just true about me, and have this sense of I don't really belong in this space. Now, a lot of times we don't belong in spaces because the spaces are telling us actively that we don't belong, whether that's because you're a woman in a male space or a non-binary person in a cisgendered space. The spaces, or a person of color in a predominantly white space. So these spaces are often truly we don't belong, and so we start feeling like we don't belong. But then we can internalize it to think like, oh, this is true. It's something about me. It's inherent to me. So we're shifting to this sense of like, no, I did that well. Oh, I'm smart, and also it's okay to say dumb stuff sometimes too. We're like, I'm doing a good job. I can learn. I'm in the right place. I'm a good leader. It's okay not to know. I may not know what I'm doing, but nobody really does. So I'm going to try my best. Or like, this isn't me, it's not my problem. Or I've got a lot to offer here. I'm proud of what I've done. And having these as our internal narratives. Now, I've looked at a lot of the kind of self-help things that would tell us what do we do with these inner critical voices. And a lot of them tell us to just be positive, to say daily affirmations, to be grateful in order to get to here. Daily affirmations for me, like I am smart, I am beautiful, I am strong. Well, the message I take is, okay, it's not okay to be stupid. It's not okay to be ugly. It's not okay to be weak. Never be weak. I better try harder. And this sense of like what I should be doubles down on the foundations of all of these shoulds that are coming from the outside world about how this narrow path that I need to walk in order to be okay or earn love or be accepted. Sometimes, and affirmations work for some people, sometimes affirmations can just kind of reinforce that sense of should. And this can be a very kind of left brain way of trying for happiness. It can be a very left brain is all about kind of logic and analysis and risk management and step-by-step forward motion control. And that can work. And there's a whole world of the right brain where actually a lot of our lived embodied experiences of trauma or hurt live, that just needs presence and just needs acceptance and just needs this sense of like the expansion of our humanity. So saying instead, it's okay to be weak sometimes. We're all weak. It's okay to be ugly or say something dumb, maybe feel ugly rather than be ugly, but it's okay to say something dumb. It's even okay to do a mediocre job sometimes. And that's all part of being human. And if I can expand my ability to be all of those things, I can stop putting so much energy into not being those things. And that energy can just flow a little bit more into what I want to create and do and be. And so this is kind of where I sense we need to go, is just presencing to the possibility of all of those things and letting go of the hurt and the pain and the moments that told us we can't be ugly, we can't say something dumb, we can't do a mediocre job. So it's moving from a sense of I can't to I've got this, but through a deep understanding and really presencing with what is and what is both wonderful and hurting. So this is the 6-week outline of our course that will start on August 22nd. We'll start with meeting the critic. We'll do a welcome. We'll do some community building with the 20 to 30 people that will be with us on this adventure. And then I'll share my own story. And this is a piece of artwork that I've created. It's a short story written and illustrated by me. All of these illustrations are mine. That is about my journey with my inner critic. And there'll be some space to meet all of our critics. It's a really special moment of making what we're subject to object in this powerful way. The following week, on August 29th, we'll explore understanding the origins of the critic, both in our families and in society. We'll do a kind of a role play to really explore, where does this part of us come from? Why did it get this role in our system, our inner system? And why does it imagine that it's doing us a favor? And this comes from the world of internal family systems. So we'll be really exploring the origins of the critic in our family and school life, but then also looking at the systemic origins of what messages do capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy and homophobia and all of these big systems of that create a lot of the trauma that we hold in our bodies or in our culture, as Menachem says. And we'll explore that together. We'll then dive into how do we craft new responses in one particular moment of or instance of self-doubt. Okay, what do I actually do? And I'll share a mental tool for how do you actually parse through these thoughts and take what's useful, because some of the messages from the critic are actually really useful risk management strategies. So we don't want to get rid of it, but we want to know, how do I take what's useful and how do I let go of the rest? And we'll do some practice and reflection around that. The following week, we will talk about thickening the narrative, and that's where we bring in multiple threads of our lives. So one of the hardest things I've found is to actually share moments of our lives that we're proud of, or that something we're excited about. That can feel really vulnerable. And it's actually, we often hedge those things, like saying, oh, I could have done that better, or like, but it may not work. And so what does it look like to stand fiercely in our self-confidence without flinching and be witnessed in that by those around us? So we'll explore those moments, and that's actively taking different stars on our path and linking them together. And it's a really powerful session. Following that, we'll look at, okay, well, what's a little scary about that? And where does our kind of inner child, when were we taught not to do that, not to be proud of ourselves in that way, not to share what's exciting and vulnerable and wild and creative about us? And we'll give a little love to that inner part of ourselves that probably was hurt at some point. And we'll rewrite the rules for it. We'll rewrite, okay, instead of the critics, dictates, what new rules do we want to live into in our lives? And we'll come out with just a beautiful list for each of us that we want to carry forward. And after that, we'll talk in our final week about stepping into ourselves and carrying all of this forward with others. So we'll ground the learning. We'll do some fun permission slips and graduation certificates for ourselves, looking back over the changes that have happened in our systems and crafting kind of a contract with our critic about how we want to move forward with it as an ally, and with our inner essence, this part of us that is going to emerge throughout our kind of spirit or soul, our breath of life. Like, how do we want to be with that moving forward? And then how do we take this to our team? So everybody that we interact with has this sense of self-doubt in some way, shape, or form, or puts the doubt on others as judgment. And so how do we create workspaces that are built from a sense of motivation and care and acceptance of humanity and all of who we are, rather than control and fear and anxiety, while still maintaining the accountability and the forward motion that the fear and anxiety kind of can create in us? So how do we do work based on care and connection and humanity that is also accountable and forward moving? So we'll bring that in our final session as we close and carry this forward. Throughout all of this, we will develop a community, and I'll be capping it at 30, but we'll be between 20 and 30 folks diving in on this journey together and really building and witnessing with one another. Now, I don't put anyone on the spot, so we'll do a lot of work in large group and with volunteers that come up, and then a little bit of small group work when appropriate. But there's also an opportunity for, if you want to dive deeper, to be connected with a triad. So a group of 3 people who will work together for an hour a week in between our main sessions to deepen the work and dive in together. And I'll provide agendas for that. So this is our 6-week program. It's intended for folks who are professionals in their lives, who are leading in some way, shape, or form at some level. Now, leadership is just kind of accepting responsibility for enabling change, so that with other people. So that doesn't mean you need to be an authority figure. It doesn't mean you need to have a title like director or supervisor. Just in some way that you want to step into creating something in the world, whether that's through your job or in your family or your home life or other relationships, and ready to step into more of who you are. So we'll get a really wonderful cohort of folks together on this journey. And I usually work with folks who are in movement space, nonprofit space, or government space. And if you're in the corporate world, you're also very welcome to join. The program costs, I invite you to contribute $8.95 as a program sponsor if you're able to do that, to contribute $5.95 for a regular seat at that level if you're able to do that, or to apply for a scholarship at $2.95 if you are able to do that. The cost, if you're like, oh, I can, I want to contribute $2,000, or I can't join this program unless I contribute $10 only. There's a space in the application to let me know that, and don't let cost be an issue. And don't let these numbers, if they're too low, feel free to contribute more so that others can join. So go ahead and apply. bit.ly /live into leadership is the application with this main QR. And on the left, you can learn more at lovethatmess.com/events. Please reach out if you have any questions, rosie.greenberg@drawntolead.org. And I look forward to working with you in this program. See you soon.